Okay, so this video is gonna be for numbers 2 and 3. 2 and 3 will be covered in this one. So they give you a function. This is a u of x function, square root of 7 plus x. So what you're trying to do on this one is, okay, so I want to read the directions. So it says, find the domain of the function. So the easiest way to find the domain, I feel like, is graphing it. If you don't understand domain, you're really not going to understand it if you don't graph it. So I'm going to make me a table over here. And I'm going to make me a graph. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to do a big graph. Just graph a couple of numbers and you can kind of see where the graph's going. Okay. So now, remember, you cannot end up with a negative. So let's talk about if we started with a negative, because we want to get, what you got to keep in mind is you want to get as close to 0 as you can for your output. So, like, you don't want to start with some random number like 7 or 9. We want to get close to 0. So say we start with -8. Well, if I put a -8 in there, that's square root of 7 plus -8. Well, what's the problem with that? That equals -1, which is an imaginary number I, which is a complex number, not real. We can't use that one. So now we've got to keep going. So what if we use -7? So if I put a -7 in there, because remember on this one, you're having to come up with your numbers to be able to graph. They're not giving me these. So you've got to come up with them. So there's my 0. Remember to start at 0. Try to start your graph at 0. So -7, if I put 7 plus -7, that equals square root of 0, which is 0. And I've found 0. So now keep going from there. So what about -6? So again, 7 plus -6 is going to be 1. +1, square root of +1 is 1. Let's do one more. So now remember, these are square roots. So you want to stay with perfect squares. So what could we subtract? Don't just go to 5, because 7 minus 5 is 2. That's not a perfect square. So what could we subtract from 7 that would give us a perfect square? What about 3? So if I did 7 plus, or -3, I should have said. If I do 7 plus -3, that gets me a 4, which is a perfect square. Square root of 4, 2. So now I can kind of see what this graph is going to look like. So go to my graph, and and remember, you can't graph this one. Graph the next one. So -7, 0. There's your first point. -6, 1. -6, up 1. And -3, up 2. Now, square root graphs do this thing where they start at a point and they go and they curve. It's almost like half. Think of the parabolas that we've been working with in the chapter before. Think of that as, if I turn that, that could be half of a parabola, in which that's what a square root function's always going to look like. Now they'll start at all different places on the graph, but they're always going to look like it's half of a parabola, one side of a parabola, however you look at it. That's kind of how they look. So now we can do the domain. Remember, your domain is your x-axis. Your x-axis is your domain. So what you want to do is you want to look, what can x, because it's the x-axis, so it's the x. So what could x be, and then which way does it go? So x could be 7, -7, and then it goes to the greater than, because it's going off in this direction, which it's going greater than. So what you could say is x is everything greater than or equal to -7? Because it starts at -7 and then it goes this way. So it's everything greater than or equal to -7. So that's your domain. Okay? All right, so this covers problems 2 and 3 on lesson 6-3.